Welcome everyone here. Thank you everyone for turning up, the officers, the applicants, representatives, and just a bit of housekeeping to start with. Please ensure all mobile phones are turned off. Toilets should be required on council back doors, downstairs on the left. Fire drill. We're not expecting any fire drills, so the alarm sound treated as actual fire, and the evacuation route through the back door will through the main back door and downstairs on the left-hand side.
Into the back car park, whereupon you make your way round to the front of the building. So that's housekeeping out the way. So we will start with the minutes of the previous meeting. Have we all had a chance to read the minutes?
Yes, I'm happy to propose them.
Proposed Councillor Bacon. I'll second them. Are we all in favour? All in favour. Do I have any declarations of interest?
Chair, I should make a declaration that I have been for some time on the Isle of Wight Day committee with the applicant. Not currently on that committee, but I don't think that causes any issues unless anyone wants to raise a problem, but I just thought I'd just mention that.
Okay. I've not been made aware of any urgent business unless anyone has any. I'm not seeing any faces, so we'll assume that there isn't any. What I will now do, you should all have in front of you a noise management plan, this one. What I'm going to do is just adjourn for 10 minutes so that everyone has a chance to properly read and digest that. 5 minutes, however long it takes you to read it properly. Just so, because it's new and no one has seen this before this morning, I think that that's the right thing to do so that we are actually looking at the newest evidence. Good morning, everybody. Did you have trouble getting in the building? Was that the... But you're here now, that's...
The stage we're at, I don't know basic housekeeping here, that we just said 5 minutes. I don't know whether we have copies of the written meeting. There is a which was presented this morning, and we're all taking 5 minutes to read that. Sorry, I'll speak closer to the microphone for you. We're just taking 10 minutes to read and digest the noise management plan which was presented to us this morning. This is obviously new, so the committee has a chance to read it. Just to take 5 minutes.
That's been updated. Yeah. I don't know what the extra update was.
is we will go through a set way of going via the various people. So we'll start off with our own officer, and then the applicant will present, and then various other people will present. They'll go through, and everyone will get a chance to speak. No party has the right to cross-examine any other party. Everything should be done via the chair. We want this to be friendly. Everyone will get an equal amount of time to speak, so no one will be hard done by. Everyone will get their chance to have their say. And when you're speaking, now is not necessarily the time to introduce new evidence. This is, in effect, a summation of the evidence that we already have. So please bear that in mind. So with that procedure being explained, I would like to hand over to the licensing officer, please.
Thank you. Just to summarise, this is an application made by Wild Bars Limited for a new premises licence for a business which is to be known as Wild and is located in Powell Street, Newport. During the consultation period, 9 valid representations were received, of which related to the objectives for the prevention of public nuisance and the prevention of crime and disorder. These can be found at Appendix 4 of the report. To summarise, concerns raised state that the grant of the licence as per application will impact nearby residents with regards to noise disturbance from music provided at the premises, noise nuisance and antisocial behaviour from customers of the business. The applicant, as a result of discussions that have taken place with those submitting representations, has proposed to reduce timings for licensable activities, including live and or recorded music, sale of alcohol, late night refreshment and the playing of films, to midnight on a Friday and Saturday, with an earlier terminal hour Sunday to Thursday. All newly proposed timings have been detailed within Appendix 2 of the committee report. Live and recorded music provided before 2300 hours will not require licensing, and therefore the updated operating schedule, along with the conditions that would be attached to the licence if it's granted, and based upon the measures included within the application, can also be found at Appendix 2. As a responsible authority, Environmental Health have raised concerns with regards to objective for the prevention of public nuisance. Details of these concerns can be found at Appendix 3 of the report. Ongoing discussions with the applicant have now resulted in an agreed approach to promoting this objective in the form of the noise management plan. Please see details of the plan as per documentation supplied prior to the hearing. Within the plan, the applicant has included information in which they detail how they will effectively manage the potential for noise disturbance via persons outside of the premises when smoking, which includes a no re-entry time after 2300 hours. In addition to this, the applicant details how they intend to reduce the risk of noise disturbance to nearby residents and businesses from regulated entertainment by installing a speaker system that will be linked to an automatic volume control facility, which will limit the level of sound emanating from live and recorded music being played at the premises. An intervening lobby is also proposed to be installed between the entrance to the actual premises and the outside of the premises, so as to prevent sound escaping from the exit point directly onto street side. As part of the plan, the applicant is also committed to supplying contact details to nearby residents and committed to implementing a process in order to address any complaints received from members of the public or nearby residents, as well as a meeting periodically to discuss and take into account concerns raised by residents in relation to the business's operations. For further details of measures that are proposed to be implemented should the licence be granted, and of which will look to promote and uphold the 4 licensing objectives, please refer to the noise management plan. So just to summarise, the options open to the subcommittee today are to grant the licence as requested by the applicant, to grant the licence as requested, but with additional conditions that they may deem appropriate and proportionate to promote the licensing objectives, or to reject the application in whole or in part. It should also be noted by those making representations that the Licensing Act contains provisions whereby an interested party can apply for a review of the licence at any time.
Thank you very much. am I to take it that the first option to grant a licence as per the application now includes the noise management plan? The first option, option 1, to grant now includes the noise management plan.
So yes, correct, yeah.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask the applicant to present their case.
Sorry, Dan,
Oh, sorry.
could I just ask?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Shane. Could I just clarify when you were talking about the hours? I think you said all activities finish at midnight and refer to Appendix 2, where and certainly one column that still refers to midnight.
That's correct, Jonathan. Yes, sorry, that was probably a slight error. Yes, recorded music is proposed to be till midnight 30 hours. So the rest of the activities are proposed to cease at midnight with recorded music. Midnight 30. Yeah.
Okay, but did I see elsewhere in the papers that in terms of planning, and there's always this strange planning and licensing don't always marry up, that planning permission only grants operation until midnight?
That is correct at present. I think that discussion will become more clear as the meeting goes on via environmental health and by the applicant. But yes, that is correct.
Okay, but there's an application to operate until 12:30 when in fact planning says you can't operate before midnight.
Yes, right, yes.
I hope that becomes clearer. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask the applicant to present their case.
Sorry. Firstly, obviously, thank you very much to all of you for your time this morning. And hopefully it's become apparent that obviously the care that's taken into local residents in the local area is significant to me. And I have tried my hardest, obviously, to work with all of the authorities throughout the application process in ensuring that that noise within the premises and outside of the premises is contained, and we do. In response to the question from Jonathan regarding music, we would only ever have background music between, or very quiet, low background music between midnight and 00:30 as part of our dispersal. But as you can see from the hours that we've requested, we are planning on closing at midnight. So there will be no sale of alcohol beyond midnight.
Can I ask everyone to talk closely into the microphone? We have one or two people that are struggling to hear, so we need to be as loud as possible, I think, unless we can do something with the volume controls. Something clever electronic that makes things happen. Have you anything else to add?
I'd just like to say, it's a bit louder, isn't it? Sorry. In regards to the noise management plan, this has been carefully devised and, of course, will be reviewed every 6 months or as required sooner if environmental health feel that necessary. It will also take on board any complaints or feedback from residents on a case-by-case basis, and there's details in there how we will deal with those responses and feedback as it goes. And obviously, if we need to review the whole plan, we'll work with all the responsible authorities to ensure that the licence is fit for the area and fit for purpose. I don't believe I've got anything further to add, and I think quite a lot's contained, obviously, within the application and the noise management plan.
Okay, thank you. Get feedback. We now move on to responsible authorities, which I guess is environmental health. They're the only ones that have any questions. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Do any councillors have any questions of the applicant? I think one.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Josh. I think it might help the committee if you could just clarify how the premises is going to operate, what the nature of it is. I've seen, I'm not a young female professional under 35, so it's not my thing by the sound of it, but is it primarily a bar, primarily a cafe, will people be coming there for food primarily, or will they be primarily coming for drink? What is the business plan in that regard? I don't find it very clear from what you've written.
No, so I apologise. There has been a little bit of confusion from this. Initially, we were looking at bringing a bar, and that's where the name Wild Bar came from. And when we first submitted the application for the signs back in May, it was going to be a bar. However, it was when we had that feedback and those objections from local residents, it became apparent. I learned more and more about the area, and we also learned that we'd be taking on all of the assets from Pizza Express. So there were previous conversations, and when I looked around with environmental health, we were looking at putting a small kitchen out the back. And then it became apparent that the food would be becoming a main part of our offering. So we are retaining the on-show kitchen, and we are pushing as a cafe bar restaurant, opening longer hours in the day and obviously into the evening. And all of our hours and our license application are parallel with Pizza Express and what they had. However, as their license lapsed in September last year, we are required to submit a new premises license. However, at all times, our hours have been submitted to be exactly the same. Does that answer your question, or have you got any further thing to add to that?
So people could just come in for a drink; they don't have to eat, for example.
We won't dictate whether people need to obviously have a drink, and I believe you can go into any restaurant and just have a drink if you wanted to. But primarily, we will be serving up food, and that is our main offering of sharing platters, and obviously trying to get people that love to eat, drink, and socialise together.
Okay, thank you. I think from what Shane said a moment ago, you have definitely undertaken to put the double doors in, which you talked about in the application.
Yes, so we did seek quotes from this at the very, very start, and that was following a conversation with environmental health. It was said the doors were required. Upon going through every single company on the Isle of Wight, it was apparent that we wouldn't get this done by September. So we have now come up with a new solution and spoken to the landlord and White Fire, and these doors will be a set of doors on the inside. So we will have an intervening lobby, but it won't be on that. So we will essentially, I will submit a new plan, but obviously you've got if anybody's in the photographs of the premises, you will have basically a lobby, but they won't be external doors. They'll be an internal set of doors. They will serve the same purpose.
Okay, and looking through the new noise management plan, which is an impressive document, but I'm a little unclear still on your policy in relation to door supervisors. On page 2, you talk about, essentially, I suppose it's conditions for when those supervisors will be in place. If there's likely to be more than 2 people outside, it's a busy period, and when it's risk assessed. And then, obviously, the further comments about door supervisors on page 4. Will you actually just have, I'd have thought if the bar's operating well, there's always going to be a risk of more than 2 people outside. So are you not, by this policy, really just going to have a door supervisor there at all times, or are you going to have someone sitting around the back? There's 2 people outside, there might be another one, quick, go and get in. How's it going to operate?
So sorry, that is a little bit unclear. So obviously every opening period, we are going to be a venue that promotes on pre-bookings, essentially. And this is something that the pandemic has done favours for in terms of customers wanting to pre-book. So we feel confident that we will know the customers that we've got and events and things that we are going to have on at the premises prior to us opening our doors. And that is where the risk assessment for door supervisors will be. Obviously, in terms of numbers outside the premises, we've dictated, and staff will manage this on a basis. We're planning on offering a full table service. So that will be the communication to residents through signs and verbally about smoking outside the premises will be communicated. And obviously we haven't got a readmission after 2,300 hours. So if customers wish to smoke, they will be required to leave the premises at that point after those hours, because between 2,300 hours and midnight on a Friday and Saturday night, that is our dispersal period, and not to be greeting new customers in. So essentially with that, it's not if more than 2 people are in the premises do we require to source supervisors, but I'm more than happy to go away and we can reword that to be more clarifical, if that makes sense.
I suppose what I'm asking is, do you anticipate always having door supervisors? Certainly, I'd have thought Thursday through Saturday.
Yes, so at all times on a Friday and Saturday, we will deem door supervisors because we are opening late. And for any other night, it will be deemed on whether we feel it's required, and we'll monitor trading because it wouldn't be financially viable to always have a door supervisor present.
And sorry, I've just got one. I do want. I promise you this is my last question. It's simply a point of clarification. I should have actually asked Shane. You referred to no re-entry after 11 o'clock. I assume that simply means no entry, so no fresh.
Yeah, so there will be no new customers, and it should say no entry and no re-entry to the premises after 2300 hours, as that is simply, as I've outlined, that's our dispersal period. So the purpose of opening beyond 11 to midnight gives us that opportunity for customers to gradually disperse from the premises, rather than on a Friday and Saturday evening when we anticipate that the premises is going to be bigger, and generally we'll likely, I've deemed the venue to be a filter venue to other premises on a Friday and Saturday night, whereas on other evenings people are likely to come to us and then they're going to go home. Hence the reason they need to be open to 2300 hours. But obviously when we're a filter venue, people are going to gradually disperse between 2300 hours and midnight, and just that extra hour gives us the opportunity to allow customers to gradually disperse rather than in large sums outside.
Thank you. I'm not allowed to ask any more questions.
You are always more than welcome to ask more questions. As long as it's all clarified for everybody, I'm happy.
I have two questions, and I might be very doesn't work. I've got quite a loud voice, so you should already Okay, I've got two. I'm surrounded by microphones now. So my first question is just some further clarity on the. Sounds like it's one of my Saturday nights, actually. So I just want some clarification on these internal doors. Is it the financial aspect of not being able to have them arranged, or is it because the workload with, I assume someone like Whitefire is going to install them? I know how busy businesses are at the moment. Can I just some clarity on that first?
Yeah, so in terms of the actual external, because initially we were looking, if you've seen the premises, I should have put a picture with it actually, but we've got the lobby, and there's sort of almost an intervening lobby where you've got two windows either side, and then you've got the main set of doors which Pizza Express had. Initially we were looking at installing some aluminium frame doors on the front. However, upon speaking to Top 9 Stylish Windows, we received quotes from nearly every glazing company in the island. There was no way that we can actually get this done before November or December time. Due to lead times, it wasn't a financial aspect at all. So we have looked at another solution which may actually work even better. I've spoken to Whitefire, who we're looking at now installing two fire doors, which is similar that we've seen with Fever and Boutique. So we will actually almost have that lobby area outside sheltered, and then have the lobby created inside the premises. So because that's something that we can get done within the timescale that we plan to open, and prior to this side of Christmas.
Thank you. My other question is not so much about the outside area, but actually what provision have you put within all of this for to ensure that there's nobody taking drugs and things like that in the toilets? In the real world, we understand that those things go on, and I want to know how that's going to be managed, because all of that combination, what would be your policy and how will you make sure that people aren't going into the toilets to do that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So the venue will operate from a very strict venue handbook, which was sent over with the initial licensing applications, the draft. Unfortunately, I haven't got a copy of it today, but we do operate a very strict, robust drugs policy in which members of staff will be on toilet checks, not just for cleanliness and hygiene, but ensuring that there are no drugs taken. So our toilets will be checked every half an hour. And obviously when on Friday and Saturday evenings, when we would risk assess more of those sort of clientele are likely to come in, then door supervisors will be present and carrying out those searches on a random basis as and when they feel required.
I've got one more if it's all right. Sorry to be a pain, but controlling noise, just looking again at the information you've provided. There's going to be a noise limiter. Where's the monitoring going to take place? So what control is there, or what measurement is there of noise that's outside the premises? So if I were, say, across the street at Red Squirrel, wherever it is, would I be able to hear anything? What is the basis of your monitoring and your limiter?
So the system we first went in, and it's detailed, is we used a company called White Noise Limited, which went into some of the apartments upstairs and dictated a level of noise that could be produced in the premises that couldn't be heard upstairs. And that was dictated to be 78 dB without any further modifications to the premises. We then used Stage Gear Rentals to come in, and they looked at an ABC system, which Shane outlined earlier on, and that's an automatic volume control which cannot be overridden. So that means that our volume inside the premises cannot dictate 78 dB, and I'm confident with the double doors outside the premises that noise wouldn't escape. And in terms of the noise of patrons escaping, obviously we've got a dispersal policy in place that not just applies to the premises, but the outside vicinity as well.
So in terms of music noise, if I walk past at 11:30, say, would I hear any music if I'm on the other side of the street?
I feel confident that you wouldn't, and obviously we've got our noise management plan. So if that is the case, then we will adjust our noise levels accordingly.
I've just got one question to add to those that have been done so far. The building itself, do any of the windows open, or are they all sealed?
No, there are 2 windows that do open within the premises. However, we have no plans to open those.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I will move on to the responsible authorities, which I believe is environmental health.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just sort of carrying on from what's been said so far, we were clearly concerned, given the close proximity of residential premises to the application premises, and we therefore objected on the grounds we had concerns in relation to the double doors that have already been mentioned. The double doors, once installed, the idea was with the music noise level inside, as is proposed, if you have a single set of doors, as soon as those are opened, you have direct noise emission from the premises. But with a double set of doors, carefully managed, you can allow people into the intervening lobby, close the door, and then allow them to exit the premises without the music noise breaking out into the street and potentially affecting any nearby residents. We also wanted a noise management plan in place to cover a number of different aspects, as you will have seen within it, and some considerable work's gone in to producing that document, and essentially environmental health are satisfied that affords a sort of a good level of protection in relation to the business operation. One thing that hasn't been mentioned so far, as I understand it, the applicant has also got requirements in their tenancy agreement to have noise levels, and the way that 78 decibels was determined is actually quite a strict level for a high level of protection for the residents, both above and opposite. So again, we are happy with that. And essentially the conditions in relation to the noise management plan, I'm satisfied, and we're proposing to have that on any licence that's granted. Aside from that, the double doors issue, I understand the doors will be in place prior to the business opening. But we had agreed a condition where no regulated entertainment could occur after 2300 hours until such time as the double doors are in place. So just to sort of address the possibility of workmen not turning up or it not being done, if we've got that condition in place as well. Thank you.
Do I have any questions for environmental health?
They switch my microphone.
Could you confirm what the applicant said about noise levels at the street? My same question about if one passes by, say 11:30, should I be able to hear anything or not? I think you may be able to hear a very low level of noise. The applicant building will provide you contain it very well, but not go one of the aspects in terms of tenancy agreement, they have noise rating levels and in fact.
Sorry. One of the issues in relation, they have in the tenancy agreement noise rating levels, and one of the factors that they take into account is the frequency component of the noise, so it will address, by complying with the noise rating at the 78 and through the sound limiter that's being proposed, that will control sort of bass beat element of it as well. So I would not expect to be hearing any bass beat in any residential property nearby either.
Anything from you, Claire?
No, I'm all right. I'm sat here listening.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We now move on to the part where other persons can make their case, so members of the public. I think I'll start by asking Councillor Jones-Evans, as she's here, if she has anything she would like to say.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, or if we just have the management plan come forward, I know it's not cross-examination, but would I be able to put some questions to you for clarification? That'd be okay. And just again to clarify the process, I'll get a chance to sum up again after we've done this first question. My memory serves, so I haven't got the list in front of me of the running order, so I'm just double checking that we sort of run one way, then we run in reverse. Okay.
Yeah, you do get the chance to sum up prior to the applicant, so yes.
Thank you, just wanted to clarify
So,
that.
yeah, if you have any questions, I mean, if the applicant's happy to accept them now, then...
Oh, just where it's not a cross-examination thing,
No.
I wanted to make sure we're doing it in an appropriate manner. Thank you. So, thank you for allowing me to come today. As everyone's probably well aware, there's been quite a lot of interest in this application, and I'm here primarily to represent my residents in the nearby premises of Savoy Court and Providence Corner as well, directly above the building. I think the main issue that residents are concerned with, as far as licensing objectives go, is the prevention of public nuisance. Obviously we've covered some of the elements within the building, but it really is the issues that are going to be coming outside the building with people arriving and dispersing. So it's got a couple of questions, if I may, just to get some clarification. So we just received this. So we're talking about the customers when they're leaving to go to smoke or actually leaving. I think it's important that there's direction about where they will go, because if they just step across the road, they'll be directly underneath Savoy Court, and I think it's unreasonable for residents to have to keep their windows closed and have to have people chattering underneath their windows late in the evening. And again, the dispersal to where they're going to catch the taxis and the buses. I think it's important that they utilise the upper part of Pyle Street and then Cockram Yard as an exit area, rather than coming around Pyle Street, Town Lane exit. I know people can go where they want, but I just think if there are instructions about please leave quietly and this is the way to go. So I think there's some clarity needed about where people will be encouraged to disperse and which way. Thank you, Councillor Bacon, to pick up about the always one door staff, because I was going to get a bit confused about that, because it does seem to be, if you're going to have people congregating outside, they need to be someone to obviously explain to them where they should be dispersing to or smoking. The background level of the music, because in the original application, it did talk about where music will be above background level. So I presume that's now been culled from that description's been culled. It will be only at background level, giving the limiters that are going to be put in place. And yeah, just the question regarding the double door lobby that you're going to be installing now, just a question of when that was going to be done, the conditions Is that going to be a condition of openings? That was just another query I had there. And talk about windows, I mean, it's great to hear that windows will not be intended to be open, but I think it's unreasonable as well for windows that can't be opened. So I think perhaps it's better if we look at a condition where the windows are closed after 9 o'clock, so it does allow some ventilation. I think it's quite important in these experiences. And just finally, because we do have an issue of antisocial behaviour in the area. There's a private car park directly underneath Savoy Court, which is directly opposite these premises, and there is currently antisocial behaviour in there. There's dealing of banned substances, and we have the outreach team working with the homeless that do use that area as well. So I think there's an issue that's wider to this as well. I just think it's important that you understand what actually happens in the area at the moment. But we also understand what all conditions to be reasonable. Residents, they can speak for themselves in a minute, but this block of flats has been there. I'm talking about Savoy Court for 30 years. This is prior to the ban on indoor smoking, so things have moved on. Although this is a block of flats, very nice, actually residential block with the house manager for people over 55 and over. So we want to encourage as many people living in our town centres as possible. So it's find that balance, that equilibrium, I think, with for people's well-being, which is very, very important. So I would ask on behalf of residents that actually the licence is granted to 2,300 hours and not midnight. That would be my ask, and really thinking this is all about the prevention of public nuisance within the licensing objectives. So that's sort of my ask and some of the points of clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry? Carry on.
So I sort of sat here listening. I've got a question for the chair. How can we ensure, thank you, Councillor Evans, and it brings up that wider picture, doesn't it, that I personally think that anybody who's young and starting out in business, we need to ensure that we have that balance of residents, but also, Newport needs to have some life put back into it as well. And stuff for younger people, I think, is really important, having a 26-year-old daughter, they get a bit stuck on a Saturday night, what they actually going to do, and they certainly don't want to come to the Checkers with me, that's for sure. So I think we need to have this fine balance, actually, that we make sure that when we grant this application, or if we grant the application, that they don't end up having the blame for absolutely everything that goes on in the area at the moment. So I need to, that's my concern, that lots of the stuff that's already happening will then be directed to Wild Island. How do we ensure that that doesn't happen? Because this will be reviewed at a point in time, won't it? So how do we manage that?
I'll bring in the officers on that one.
Thanks, Chair.
There's obviously an issue that has come up previously.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Mosdale. Very good point. When we look at complaints about licensed premises going forward, we don't just assume that it's coming from that premises. As you can understand, there's a lot of movement through the town, and the movement of people through Newport is an issue, especially from where the late night venues are back to transport hubs. So what we have to fully understand is the customer, where that person is, what the type of noise is, who's causing it, etc. We do liaise a lot with the police who provide that information at night time, and we'll also liaise with the premises to make sure that what was happening at that time. We do have the benefit of CCTV in the area as well, so we can always review that to see where that people are actually coming from. And you're right, it is essential that just because there was an incident outside of X premises, that premises isn't blamed for that particular issue when it could have been coming from those people who have come from B. And also that the premises is actually doing their job and turning people away, which therefore then causes the antisocial behaviour. So there is quite a bit of work doing to it, and we only, because any action we take would be a legal prosecution or under the licensing act, we have to be 100% certain that the information is correct. So please be rest assured that we've been automatically blaming that premises.
Carol.
I have one more question, sorry. I think we have to be aware that, so for me, I look at this and I listen to this conversation being a mother of some very young professionals who live in London, and if they heard that the late night licence was like midnight, they'd be, well, sorry, but that's sort of 2 o'clock in the morning. Don't get me wrong, 9 o'clock's late for me, now I've passed 50, but if this is meant to be for young professionals, I think actually saying a stop off at 11 o'clock and you'd come down for the weekend from somewhere like London, you'd actually think, you know, what was going on. So how do we decide, I'm sorry, I'm new to this committee, but how do we decide that this is late night? Because if you are a young professional, which this is aimed at, how is 11 o'clock late? You know, even midnight's not late really in their world, is it?
It's a good question, and the committee has to understand the location, what's taking place in that location. A town centre location may be different to a country location or a quieter area, and it's taking into account all of those issues and around the nighttime economy development, etc., etc. So that's why the council, the subcommittee, is here to determine that outcome and take into account all of those relevant parts. Also, with the likes of Mark, he's here to advise around statutory nuisance to ensure that the premises do not, and the licensing objective is the prevention of public nuisance. So we're here to prevent that from occurring. So taking into account responsible authorities, the concerns of the residents, and making sure that all of those are covered. There are late night venues later than this in Newport, but not in this location. So it's just taking into account those common factors.
Sorry, Claire, one other comment. Also, what you need to take into account is the measures or the proposed measures that the applicant is putting in place or is going to be implementing in order to mitigate the risk of noise nuisance or crime or disorder within the vicinity of their premises. And just to obviously confirm what Kev said earlier, the licence holder or the applicant or the business owner is responsible for that immediate vicinity of their premises, but guidance states that, you know, we're all responsible for our own behaviour. So outside of that immediate vicinity, we can't really blame, if you like, the business for the behaviour of people elsewhere. I mean, the business has a duty to refuse entry to people that are highly intoxicated or may have caused trouble before. But as long as they're sort of implementing those management policies, then that's what we can expect of them.
And just to help you for peace of mind, Councillor Mosdale, is that the Act does provide provision to recall the licence in if it's not working.
Thank you. I'll ensure that they're answered at the appropriate time. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to ask the members of the public that are here to see if any of you would like to say anything. I'll give you the opportunity. Can you use the microphone, please?
Yeah, I'm Jennifer Sims and I live at Savoy Court. Savoy Court is for 55-year-olds and above. So if I decide that the noise, or I'm not now happy with what is happening across the road, I can't opt to now sell to a younger element who might be quite happy to just nip out the flat and go across the road, like your daughter or your children. We're locked in there. So you're 55, you're not going to be able to sell to anybody if that noise level or becomes antisocial behaviour. So it will then bring the value of the properties and everything down if it is not controlled properly. The noise is our biggest problem, is our real concern, I think. If you could sell to a 20-year-old, he might think it's great, but you have to be over 55 to live there, and I think it comes under sheltered accommodation.
You have a house manager there.
And that's my biggest issue is there.
Okay, thank you. I think that's understood. I think all the members of the committee are well aware of what Savoy Court is. I used to work at the county press across the road, so I've been aware of those flats for a very long time. What I should say, I think, point out at this point, is that if the noise level does get to a point where it's a nuisance, there is the ability within the Act to call the licence in at any point, and the officers have already pointed that out. So, and that's the mechanism whereby we can ensure that if there is a problem, it can be dealt with. So just to put your mind at rest with that, it should never. I think the Licensing Act allows for the fact that it should never become a problem for you, and if it does, then there are mechanisms in place. I think I'm correct in saying that, sir?
No, that's absolutely correct, yeah. As part of the conditions within the licence, that will look to control and mitigate the risk of noise nuisance. But there's other complaint procedures through Environmental Health or through the licence itself, which can address concerns should noise nuisance sort of be proven.
So, have you got any questions? I think Jonathan has a question.
Chair, just given the discussion we've just been having, I wonder if I might have your leave to put one more question to the applicant. I know once we get to summing up, we can't ask for further evidence, but I feel it might be useful if you're happy with that.
I was about to ask the applicant a couple of things myself. So.
Well, do you want to go first?
I may cover this. I think that discussion has raised a couple of points, which I think would be useful if they were addressed. For me, and Councillor Bacon obviously has a question, for me, the two questions that were thrown into my mind by what Councillor Jones-Evans said was where exactly you're proposing people should smoke, because obviously if people sit on a pavement is a possible noise problem, and actually where taxis are going to be advised to pull up, because what I can see, knowing those roads around there as I do, the most logical place for them to pull up is actually directly in front of Savoy Court, which is obviously what we don't want to happen because that's going to be directly underneath people's windows. So is there some other location that we can advise, or you can advise taxi companies to use as their drop-off and pick-up point, so that we can get that noise away from the residents? And I think Councillor Bacon had another question.
We do those two first.
No, so at all point, as I've outlined in the noise management plan, a customer will be pointed in the direction of the taxi rank. Obviously, we can discuss, as Councillor Jones-Evans looked at the route that we direct customers, obviously something that's completely safe as well. I'd want to assess that Cockram Yard is a safe direction to obviously direct people, especially given our target demographic of an evening. And in respect to, we're not planning on having taxis pulling up outside the premises at all, and that's not something I want because distinctly there is no parking. There is a small loading bay adjacent, but the spots outside, parking spaces allocated outside Savoy Court are for disabled passengers, for the residents there, and they are disabled spaces, so we don't want taxis pulling up there. And, if it becomes an issue, we will communicate that with taxi companies to drop people at the taxi rank, which is only a short walk from the premises. And in terms of, can you repeat the other question, please, in regards to, was it the noise?
It was where the smoking area was.
Okay, yeah. So obviously we are going to have very strict notices, and we will enforce customers that if they do not respect local residents, they won't be welcome back into the premises. So if a customer does go out and they are shouting outside the premises, then we will advise them that they're not welcome back in. So we will put that in as a strict admission policy too. And also, if customers do wish to have a conversation, we won't direct them to Savoy Court at all. We'll direct them completely away, but remind them that they can, as long as it's before 2300 hours, they are welcome back in the premises. So, we'll push them away from residential towards the town centre. You've got St Thomas's Square, you've got places like Psychos. If they want to go outside and have a conversation, they'll be requested that they go, far away from the premises, if possible.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bacon.
Thank you. When one applies for a licence, one applies for the maximum one wants. I think some people would be interested in that some premises around Newport have licenses to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They never use them, but they're there as a potential thing. Your hours are as listed in Appendix 2 at the moment, but what is the actual way you see yourself operating? Because in a business term, you're not going to stay open late on days when there's no business. No, a November Tuesday is not the day to go open to midnight, is it? There are some weeks where you will want to use the maximum what hours ever as you're granted, Cows Week, Christmas and so on. But for an average week, what do you actually anticipate your likely hours to be?
So the proposal, as obviously I have taken the feedback on from Councillor Jones-Evans regarding closing the premises at 2300 hours, and we've outlined that from Sunday to Thursday that will be the case. And I believe I outlined earlier from Friday and Saturday nights when we're likely to become a filter venue to other premises and customers are likely to remain in Newport for their journey. We will remain open to midnight, but there'll be no readmission after 2300 hours and no new customers welcome, as that is a dispersal hour for customers to filter out gradually rather than 2300 hours, as obviously if we've got 70, 80 people still dining with us, obviously to, you know, put lights up and say sort of everybody out at that time, that wouldn't be beneficial to the residents, and that is likely to cause more disruption than allowing us to open until midnight. Any special events that, in which case on a weekday we do want to look at opening the premises, we would communicate to residents, and as I've outlined, we want to build a strong relationship. We're on a 10-year lease, you know, I don't want to be, you know, I want to build a relationship. You know, I've always been involved in the community with Isle of Wight Day and with sort of Frogs Mountains Music Club and things, and I want to retain that with this premises as well.
So in a standard week, apart from Friday, Saturday, you would not anticipate opening past 11 p.m.
No, we wouldn't anticipate opening past 11 o'clock, but obviously that midnight licence gives us that opportunity that if we are busy, we can obviously then enforce a slow dispersal of customers like Pizza Express used to.
I do believe those hours are the ones which are contained within the noise management plan, which obviously if we accept the noise management plan as part of a granting of a licence would come into force under that. So that actually does give a bit of that certainty to the hours. Right, so I think unless anyone has any other questions or anything else they'd like to say, we're into the summing up phase. And we go in sort of reverse order. Sorry, I thought I saw a hand up there.
Chairman, can I just ask, is Councillor Jones-Evans had her questions answered?
Thank you, Mr. Winchcombe. Yeah, I think it was just the question of the windows, really. I think that was the one. That was just really a request as a condition.
Yeah, we can consider that when we consider our final thing. And as I said, I mentioned it earlier, it's come up in a previous couple of applications, so I'm very well aware. You can close the door and put as many doors on as you like, but if you've got all the windows open, it makes absolutely no difference. So windows let noise out as easily as anywhere else, so I'm very well aware of that.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make everyone aware, if they're not already aware, that there is a condition which will form part of the licence if it's granted, which will require all windows and doors to be closed post 2300 hours. Yeah, the 2 windows that the applicant has referred to previously obviously could potentially stay open, but they would need to be closed from 2300 hours onwards. 23, yeah.
That's the current wording of the condition. Okay. So unless anybody else has anything to say, I'll try this again. We're into the summing up mode, in which case it's slightly different order, in which case we go to the responsible authorities, which is environmental health. Have you anything to add?
Thank you, Chairman. No, essentially with the proposed conditions in relation to the noise management plan, double doors, environmental health are satisfied that the prevention of public nuisance licensing objective will be upheld.
Thank you. We now go to the other persons. Have either of you anything would you like to sum up?
Right. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. You know, our town centres across the country are changing, let's face it, you know, with being lots of impact of COVID and just the impact of online shopping. So, you know, every town centre is facing issues. And here in Newport, we want to have a thriving town centre. There's also a drive to get more people living in our town centre as well, which is quite right. We have lots of, we have a housing crisis on the Isle of Wight, and we also have many empty properties in the high street and town centres, so town centre areas, which there are active projects to get these lived in. Coupled with the government has now moved to allowing permitted development rights, so businesses under a certain square footage, so not the big shops, they can just be turned into residential without any planning permission required at all. So I think we need to be looking at how are we going to all sort of coexist. There's going to be different activities coming into our town centre as well, so that as retail sort of pans away as we know it, and we have other diverse activities, which is all great and which is all welcomed. However, because the new permitted development rights, that doesn't allow the local authorities sort of to control that core activity area. So there's going to be a dispersal, and it's going to be much more difficult to try and achieve that equilibrium we really want. So that was just sort of scene setting of where we're going. And I think the residents, you know, in this area, Savoy Court and Providence Corner, you know, they've lived in harmony with the previous tenants of that building, Pizza Express, for many years, and you know, wasn't an issue. But I think some of the uncertainty regarding this particular application came from the original use that was put out there about being some sort of French disco. I think that's what it was. I can't remember. So we have, as you know, as Mr. Winchcombe said, we have to sort of balance where this activity is taking place with how many residents and the type of residential accommodation it is, because we're going to get more of this. But we don't want to have any empty premises. We want to have a thriving town centre where we can live in harmony. So I think, you know, I think you've heard from the residents and myself about our major concerns. There is CCTV actually in the entrance of the car park I was talking about, where the antisocial behaviour already is carried out. So there is a certain element that they can be seeing who is coming in and out. But we just want to live in harmony. We're thinking of the well-being of residents, and also we want to have, you know, there's a good business there. Residents do welcome the discourse, ongoing discourse, and the meeting that they will decide to have in 3 months' time. So I think this issue of the double doors, I think, is going to be really important, and having that as a condition in place. So I will still come back to my original ask of 2,300 hours, windows closed at 2,100 hours, and you know, the dispersal where people are going, I think is really important. And it's good to hear that the taxis won't be picking up directly outside. Though again, that's difficult to control, because a taxi will just turn up. Someone could just call a taxi and they could be anywhere. So I just think it's people are aware of that. I think that's really important, and there's ongoing dialogue and discussion. So that's it from me, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
No, thank you. Any other residents wish to sum up? Members of the public? No? Okay, we shall move on. To the applicant, your chance to sum up. So.
I'd just like to say thank you very much for the time, and obviously if there's any further questions attached to me, I'm more than happy to answer them. But obviously, hopefully we can build a strong working relationship with residents and obviously the local authority alike, and hopefully the noise management plan that was put together in time for this meeting today obviously proves, you know, my commitment obviously to residents and ensuring that we do build a successful business within Newport that works with other businesses and residents alike.
Thank you. Over to Shane Batcher, the licensing officer for this.
Okay, the Environment and Health Department have approved the noise management plan, which will be conditioned as part of the licence, should the committee decide to grant it with the conditions agreed. There were no other representations from any other responsible authorities. Noise management plans proposed to take into account residents' concerns and has detailed a reduction in timings for the proposed licensable activities when compared to the original application. So that reduction has been put forward. The subcommittee may believe that these measures are sufficient for ensuring that the objectives are promoted and that there is scope for the police, environment health and licensing to liaise with the applicant to negotiate suitable changes to the noise management plan should issues arise in the first instance. The applicant has indicated that works to the double doors and that entrance area will be completed before the business begins to operate. And the subcommittee may wish to consider withholding permission for that regulated entertainment via way of a condition until those second doors have been implemented. But nevertheless, the licensing subcommittee must be aware that live and recorded music provided before 2300 hours will not require licensing, and therefore a condition to prevent this from taking place in relation to that double doors would be unenforceable before 2300 hours. The options open to you today are to grant that licence as requested by the applicant, to grant the licence with the additional conditions or any others that you may deem appropriate and proportionate to promote the objectives, or to reject the application in whole or in part.
Thank you very much. I think I would like to adjourn the meeting so that we can take a bit of advice. So I'll see everyone back here in about 10 minutes' time. Yeah, 20 past, we'll say. Is that fair? 20 past. Thank you for your patience, everyone. That took slightly longer than we anticipated due to technical issues with printing stuff. But we've sorted that now. So we'll reconvene the meeting. And we will move on to, the committee has made a decision, and I hand over to the legal officer to read that decision out for you.
Thank you, Chair. Upon receiving the reports of the licensing section, oral and/or written evidence from the applicant, responsible authorities and other persons, and having regard to the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 and the Isle of Wight Council's Statement of Licensing Policy, the subcommittee hereby grant the licence as per the application, but modified to such an extent as members have considered appropriate for the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives, namely by requiring the following modifications and conditions. Number 1, the conditions suggested by Environmental Health on page 47 of the report. Number 2, no regulated entertainment shall take place until the internal lobby doors have been installed. Number 3, windows and doors are to be closed and remain closed from 2100 hours. Number 4, door supervision to be compulsory on Friday and Saturday night from 2200 hours and at other times in accordance with the noise management plan. Number 5, the noise management plan to be amended to reflect no entry or re-entry from 2300 hours. And number 6, all licensable activity ceases at midnight. And the reason, as per reasons given within the same report, in order to promote the licensing objectives and in particular the prevention of public nuisance and in accordance with the Isle of Wight Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the Section 182 guidance. In reaching the above decision, the subcommittee have had regard to the Human Rights Act 1998 and in particular Article 1 of the first protocol, Article 8 and Article 6. The subcommittee consider this decision is proportionate and appropriate for the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives under the Licensing Act 2003. There is a right of appeal to the Magistrate Court if anyone is dissatisfied with this decision, and any appeal must be made within 21 days of the date of notification. And now I shall pass this back to the Chair for signing. Thank you.
Thank you. What's the nose then? Right, thank you very much, everybody. It's always awkward in these times. No one ever gets everything that they want. But I hope that we've satisfied enough of your concerns and enough of your wants today. As it was mentioned earlier, there is the right to revisit the licence later if there are issues, but hopefully with the conditions that we've imposed that won't be necessary. And I thank everyone for attending today.